Okay, so now we're going to start evaluating piecewise functions. And remember, we're given 2 or more functions to graph. So whenever it's giving us f of -3, it's telling us to replace x with -3. Now, if you think about it, we have certain intervals that we can use for each graph, okay, certain boundaries. And -3 doesn't fit in both of those boundaries. It'll only fit in one. So -3 will not fit in 1 to infinity, but it will fit here. So that means we have to use the 2x function, okay? So since we're using 2x, instead of the x, I'm replacing it with -3. And so that means that f of -3, if I were to evaluate that, would give me -6. All right, so for number 2, again, I'm given a new value of x. X is now 9. But 9 does not fit in that first interval, okay? But it does fit in the second one. So we are going to use 3x squared and plug in there, okay? So 3, but instead of x, I'm going to put 9 squared. Now, the calculator will do this for you, but if you make sure to use PEMDAS, you can do it by hand. And so really that's 3 times 81 because you have to do exponents before you multiply. So 3 times 81 is 243. And that's what f of 9 is. Then moving along, we have f of 1. And again, we have to figure out, okay, which boundary is it going to fit in? Oh, they both have 1s. This one has a 1, this one has a 1. But only one of them is including 1, and that's the second one. So we have 3x squared, but instead of the x, I'm going to replace it with 1. 1 squared is 1. 3 times 1 is 3. So f of 1 equals 3. Now, we're going to move along, and we're going to do a second set of functions. We're going to do the same exact thing. We have to evaluate them. So for the first one, we have f of -2. That's my x value. Okay, so I have to figure out, where does -2 fit? Which boundary does it fit in? Well, it's not less than -6, but it is between -6 and 0. So I'm going to use the function x minus 2, actually the absolute value of x minus 2. So when I replace that, I get -2 minus 2. And if you remember from middle school, the absolute value means how far away is it from 0? It's always going to be positive, okay? You can't have a negative distance. So anything that comes out of your absolute value symbols must be positive. So I get -4, but when it comes out of the absolute value symbols, the answer, your final answer, is +4. All right. So for the next one, again, I have to figure out which boundary will -10 fit in. So, oh, it is less than -6. It's left of -6 on the number line, so it's less than that. So I'm going to plug in -10, so equals -x. So -10. The negative was already there, and x is -10. Well, negative times a negative is a positive, so f of -10 is just 10. All right. Then we have f of 0. So I have to figure out again which boundary it fits in. And so got x is less than -6, not there. Between -6 and 0, yeah. X is greater than 0. No, that's not including 0. So again, we're going to use the absolute value function. So x minus 2. So in this case, 0 minus 2. Well, right now, it's f of 0 equals absolute value of -2. But when we take it out of the absolute value, it has to be positive. So f of 0 equals 2. F of 0 equals 2. All right? Now, we're moving backwards. They're going to give us f of x, which really means y, right? So y equals 10 is what they're saying here. Y equals 10. So we have to find x. All right. So I'm going to plug in 10 for both. I'm going to have 10 equals x minus 6. And I'm going to have 10 equals 2x minus 3. So I took both of these functions because I don't know which one I need to use it for. So I'm going to find both of them, find both x's, and then see if it matches the interval at which it's at. Okay. So to solve for x on this one, remember I'm going to add 6 to both sides, and I get 16 equals x. So that's the first function. X is 16, but is 16 less than negative 2? Because look, it's saying x is less than negative 2. Is 16 less than negative 2? Nope. So that's not going to be the value of x. So now I try the other one. 10 equals 2x minus 3. Add the 3 over, I get 13 equals 2x. And then once I divide by 2, I get 6.5. Is 6.5 greater than or equal to negative 2? Does it match my boundary for that second equation? And it does. So that's my answer. The other one will not work. Okay. So let's try the other one. F of x equals negative 5. Remember, that just means y. Y is negative 5. That's the answer to my equation. So I'm going to try both of them. Negative 5 equals x minus 6. And negative 5 equals 2x minus 3. Equals 2x minus 3. All right. So negative 5 equals x minus 6. When I add the 6 over, I get 1. 1 equals x. Does 1 equals x match the first boundary? Is 1 less than negative 2? No, it is not. So then I try the other one. I get negative 2 equals 2x. And when I divide by 2, I get negative 1. So negative 1 is my x. Now, is negative 1 greater than or equal to negative 2? It is to the right of negative 2, so that means it's greater. So this would be my answer. All right. We got new functions here. Again, we're finding the x values. They're giving us the y because f of x just means y. Okay, so y equals 4. So I'm going to plug it into both. 4 equals negative x. And I have 4 equals 4. So that looks a little funny, huh? We'll get to that. So if I divide both sides by negative 1, then I get negative 4 equals x. Is that true for that first function? Is that in the boundary between negative infinity and 0? Yes, it is. So let's look at the other one. 4 equals 4. Well, that's weird. Okay, that means infinite solutions, right? But we don't have infinite solutions on piecewise functions because we have a boundary. So really, x is going to be 4 from 0 all the way to 12, that whole thing there, okay? So x is going to be between 0 and 12, all of those places. That's where y is going to be 4, okay? It's going to be 4 at negative 4 for this first function, okay? It's going to be 4 at 0 all the way to 12 for that second function. Okay. All right, lastly, we have f of x equals 0. So if I look back over here, I have 0 equals negative x, and then I have 0 equals 4. 0 equals 4. Okay, 0 equals negative x. If I divide both sides, I still get 0. So 0 equals x. Does that fit into that first one? X equals 0. No, it doesn't include that. So that's not going to be a value for x. All right, so let's try the next one. 0 equals 4. That doesn't work. That's not even an answer. That means no solution. So neither one of them. So there is no place anywhere in that piecewise function where y is going to be 0. Nowhere. So no solution.